could turn persistent for a time in the south, and some persistent rain pushing in then across parts of Scotland with some snow over the highest ground. Greatest chance of seeing any sunshine tomorrow will be in the far north of Scotland, but here's where it's also going to be chilliest. Elsewhere, a pretty mild day with highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius. Mild for most on Thursday, could be even milder than on Wednesday, but again cloudy with further outbreaks of rain, and these could be pretty heavy at times. Could see some localised impacts. Notice some heavier rain pushing into the south as we go into the afternoon. At the moment, Friday does look like it will be drier with some bright or sunny spells, but then the rain returns in time for Saturday. Bye-bye, I'll see you again soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The EU rules are trying to choke even that. And I just think, you know, I would join this protest in a heartbeat. And you are right to point out this stuff about them being right-wing. How dare they slate them as right-wing when these are real people whose livelihoods are
remember,
being
a lot of
trashed.
people who work in the farm industry, Malone, get paid very little money.
They get paid,
Agricultural workers are very badly paid.
They get paid nothing, Piers. And, you know, the profits... I think on Clark's Farm I read somewhere that I saw that when you sell it like a sheep's skin, it's 30 pence or something.
Right.
And you say, what?
Yeah.
And so you wonder how they can manage that. And I think after a year, Clarkson made a handful of pounds.
He made like 90 quid profit or something.
In a whole year working.
But Carol makes a really good point, though, doesn't she, Nikki, about this idea that we go to the supermarkets, we shop there, we eat our food, we don't often give it a thing. And the farmers have become so frustrated by this idea that they are not respected.
Absolutely. I mean, they're running what are effectively small businesses, often family businesses that have been passed down through generations. They also tend to know the land and the animals better than anyone else in those areas. You know, I am all for green protests, you know, I'm all for climate change activism, but actually... the only way you can do that is gradually. It's exactly what we've seen with Port Talbot. You know, you can't just go in and say you're not going to do it anymore this way. You've got to do it this way instead. The Tata Steel thing. Yes, exactly. You've got to do it this way instead. You know, lots of farmers are on board with protecting the planet, but they can't do it overnight. You've got to give them time. So they're protesting. You know, they're saying no farmers, no food.
When
well,
you say
can't
you
get any more
support
obvious.
some of these environmental protests, you're not one of these closet supporters of Just Stop Oil, are you?
I'm not a closet supporter. I think I've been quite open about Just Stop Oil.
No.
I don't like all their methods, but I do like the message. But I do appreciate the message. Yeah, but sometimes you've got to do difficult things.
What they're asking for now, those protesters, are unrealistic. What these protesters are asking for is not unrealistic.
No.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
...is imploding over Gaza.
Some of you may remember that we have defeated this kind of betrayal before when we voted out Labour's Una King 20 years ago. So, if we're united, then I know we can do it again.
The man who represented Shamima Begum, the ISIS bride, and a possible future MP joins me to explain how he and others could oust Starmer's MPs. Plus...
why are the people who are in charge, who told us all to do the right thing, have left us all to rot?
The voice of the vaccine injured speaks out live after going viral for calling out the Prime Minister, and...
22,000 people came, and it turns out that they are now stuck in some sort of legal limbo land, costing us £1.5 million a year.
You are still paying for 22,000 illegal immigrants that we can't deport. Nigel will be live also.
Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white.
Do you feel guilty for being white? Plus, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are accused of being utterly shameless yet again. And on my panel tonight is his GB News star, Nana Akua, Tory MP Jonathan Gullis, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Oh, and can you guess what happens next here? All right, well, I will reveal all. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. The Labour Party is going up in flames. I detail it all next.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. A former Labour MP who's seeking re-election has been administratively suspended from the Labour Party pending an investigation over anti-Semitic remarks he allegedly made at a party meeting. The Jewish Labour movement has strongly condemned comments Graham Jones reportedly made about British-Israeli Jews, saying they were appalling and unacceptable. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer withdrew his party's support for another candidate, Azhar Ali, who was recorded suggesting Israel had used the October the 7th Hamas attack as a pretext to invade Gaza. Sir Keir insists the party has changed under his leadership.
Well, those comments were appalling, and that is why we took decisive action. It is virtually unprecedented to withdraw support for a candidate in the way that I withdrew support for this candidate yesterday. That's what a changed Labour Party is all about. And of course, any allegation will be fully investigated by the party. But the important thing is the decisive action that's been taken to make it absolutely clear that this is a changed Labour Party.
Sir Keir Starmer. Well, Conservative Minister Grant Shapps says Labour have no justification for allegations of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
I think Starmer's been taking the public for fools. He's supported and promoted a candidate who has expressed the most atrocious racism against Jewish people. And Starmer hasn't acted out of some sort of principle. He's acted out of really political expediency now and just said, OK, well, we're going to chop him, but only once the media pressure became too much.
Grant Shapps. Well, the government's looking closely at the option of bringing injured children from Gaza to the UK for medical treatment. Lord Cameron revealed today there is the possibility of transferring some children to British hospitals, including Great Ormond Street. However, the Foreign Secretary reiterated to the House of Lords earlier on today that initial efforts are focused on providing medical attention to Palestinians in the region itself. 3 people have been found guilty of a terror offence by displaying images of paragliders at a pro-Palestinian march in central London. The 3 women displayed the images just a week after Hamas militants used paragliders to enter Israel in October. The Crown Prosecution Service argued the trio's actions amounted to the glorification of Hamas. But lawyers for the group suggested they were actually displaying images of a parachute emoji. And the very sad news today that veteran BBC broadcaster Steve Wright, one of the most familiar voices on the airwaves in the UK, has died at the age of 69. The DJ's last show aired just this Sunday after more than 4 decades presenting on Radio 1 and Radio 2. Tributes from stars like Rylan, Elaine Page and fellow DJs including Sarah Cox, Ken Bruce, Simon Mayo and Tony Blackburn have all been posted online, too many to mention. And Gary Davis, the veteran BBC broadcaster, said in the last half hour he's absolutely shocked and devastated, adding, "We have lost a broadcasting giant." Steve Wright, who died today, incidentally, World Radio Day, at the age of 69. For the very latest news stories, do sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The Labour Party is in an absolute mess, but so is society. Their candidate in Rochdale resorted to pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories in order to win votes. Why? Because he was getting turfed out of the town, like this incident in a restaurant.
Murderers, that's what you are. Listen to me. No, you're wrong. Say maybe won't listen. Free, free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
He'll have seen others getting battered on the doorstep, like this incident in Tower Hamlets.
I understand, still campaigning for the same. You don't see the news? You think Keir Starmer is on your side? He's an open Islamophobe at the moment. He's an Islamophobe, he's an open Zionist, but you've got no spine. Have some shame.
Vice-Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been hammered in the street.
Could you live without water, Rachel? Have you had a glass of water today? The children are digging holes for water, Rachel. It's just so sad, Rachel. How would you like to dig your children out of under rubble? Have you got children, Rachel? I've got a daughter.
Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner has copped it out and about as well.
Angela Rayner, why have you supported genocide? Why have you supported Palestine? Angela Rayner, you have supported genocide of the Palestinian people. Angela Rayner, shame on you. Shame on you, Angela Rayner.
And in Redbridge, a part of the Ilford North constituency where Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting's slim 5,000 majority is under threat from Liam Mohammed, a British Palestinian Muslim, this poster appeared today. It reads, "Vote for genocide, vote for Labour." Well, this all culminates in the now former Labour candidate, Azhar Ali, at a secret meeting in Lancashire talking about Jews in the media and Jews being responsible for their own massacre at a behind-closed-doors event because he wanted to bring the pro-Palestine community back on side.
The Egyptians are saying that they warned Israel 10 days earlier. 2 weeks earlier. Americans warned them 2 weeks before. A day before. There's something's happening, right? Netanyahu, right, deliberately, he was in political trouble, he's in political trouble, he cashed it. They deliberately, I believe that, and I've said it publicly, they deliberately took the security off, they allowed the massacre, and it was a massacre of 1,200 innocent people, right? They allowed that massacre, and that gives them the green light to do whatever they bloody want.
And still, the plot thickens. Labour has tonight suspended a second parliamentary candidate who was also in attendance at that infamous private meeting in Lancashire. Former MP for Himburn, Graham Jones, who was selected to run in the constituency again at the next election, was heard delivering this message to his fellow activists.
In Israel again, you know, and I'm sure that all these people think that when they go home, but you will not get Israel over the line unless we go at them hard.
Well, why is there British people in IDF?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, this has been raised, and I'm going to take this up because we have a simple rule.
They're allowed to get a flight there as well.
You do, unless there is a military alliance between us and that particular country, NATO or whatever, then or an individual one, you should not be fighting. No British person should be fighting for any other country. At all, full stop. It's against the law and you should be locked up.
Well, effing Israel and Brits fighting for the IDF should be locked up. Wow. That bombshell recording was unearthed by politics website Guido Fawkes, and frankly, like everyone else, they can clearly smell blood. So they've asked a whole load of Labour MPs today if they were at that event and didn't condemn it. But Starmer cannot handle this situation. He would have lost a big chunk of his front bench over Gaza if he was in power. He sent Labour big hitters into bat for Mr Ali over the weekend and then withdrew support.
Well, those comments were appalling, and that is why we took decisive action.
Well, as I previously revealed, a new website called themuslimvote.co.uk has sprung up, targeting predominantly Labour MPs who haven't backed a ceasefire and have a large Muslim population in their constituency. One of those MPs is, of course, Roshanara Ali in Bethnal Green. And this is the seat that saw furious protests outside her office.
Why are you here? Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Well, the man now standing against her in Bethnal Green and Stepney is an independent candidate, and he is Tasneem Akunji, who is the ISIS bride Shamima Begum's former representative, legal representative, and he joins me now. Look, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on the show. It's a fascinating case study, this, OK? I've got to ask you first and foremost, do you think that Israel allowed this October 7th massacre to take place, as that candidate in Rochdale alluded to?
Well, I'd like to first address the point that you've introduced me as Shamima Begum's lawyer, and that's right that you do so. But the UK government's taken a very firm stance about Shamima Begum. Anyone who's involved in illicit activities or terroristic activities abroad, this government has chosen to strip them of citizenship. Now, I hope that if that's a precedent that's set, anyone on the Israeli side, in terms of anyone who's British, has gone and joined the IDF and committed genocide or war crimes, the UK government would take the same stance there. So that's a very firm position the UK government has taken with Shamima Begum, and they should take the same stance if they're being consistent with anyone involved in war crimes.
So just to clarify, look, just to clarify then, so you are comparing ISIS bride Shamima Begum to British people who are going to fight for the IDF?
No, that's not what I said. What I said was Shamima Begum has conducted herself and joined a terrorist organisation. Those who have gone and joined the IDF and committed genocide or war crimes, the British government should take a similar stance to that.
Is that what you think the IDF are doing then?
I think that the IDF are conducting themselves in a way that is potentially genocidal, and there's certainly war crimes that have been committed, but from what I've seen.
Right. So, by extension, then, you think that any British person who's fought for the IDF should, what, not be allowed to come back home?
So the difficulty there is you keep slipping a bit from what I'm saying. Anyone who's joined the IDF and committed war crimes or genocide, the British government should take a similar
If it's proven. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. No, look, absolutely. So, do you think that Israel allowed the October 7th massacre?
No, that's not the opinion I hold, and I think it's a very bizarre thing to say at all, particularly for a politician. Now, I don't know what he hoped to achieve by saying that, because you alienate everybody by saying that. Anyone who's on the pro-Palestinian side, anyone who's on the pro-Israel side, both sides are alienated by the statement he made. A very foolish statement.
OK. And are Hamas a terrorist organisation?
They certainly are under English law, yes.
They are under British law. In your view, though, what do you think?
Well, I'm a British lawyer, and I have to advise people that if you say anything that is promoting a terrorist organisation, as defined by British law, that itself is an offence. So I certainly wouldn't come on television and tell anyone to go and do something that's against the UK law.
OK. Apart from Palestine and what's going on there now in a ceasefire, what ticket are you running on? So if people vote for you in Bethnal Green and Stepney, what are the issues? Is it just a ceasefire? Is it just a foreign policy ticket you're running on?
No, not at all. An MP, when they are put into their position, their job is to look after all the constituents that they have and the concerns of the constituents. Currently, the Labour Party, and particularly through Rushnara Ali, in the borough of Stepney and Bethnal Green and Stepney, which is now named, she certainly showed that the Labour Party has betrayed its voter base, it's betrayed its constituents, not just on Palestine, but most particularly on Palestine. And effectively, that's the straw that's broken the camel's back. What we've seen is Keir Starmer gone out with a very clear manifesto in hand and suddenly flip-flop around that, turn his back on a number of deals. And one of the things he has also turned his back on is on the Palestine issue. So we have a flip-flopping sort of leader of the opposition who's also flip-flopping on the candidates. And the electorate are not happy that we have somebody who's got no policy line, no clear idea of who their candidates are, and on top of that, really has betrayed some of the fundamental principles that the Labour Party is supposed to hold close to his heart.
Can you understand why a lot of people are very concerned that we have these organisations like the muslimvote.co.uk popping up where they openly say things like they want candidates to run on a ticket of quotes unquote Muslim issues? I mean, can you understand why people are concerned about that?
Well, I can understand why the Muslim community is concerned about Islamophobia and certain issues, particularly Palestine, that's not unique to them, but certainly the Islamophobia issue is unique to them, and they've been uniquely ignored by the entire political class. So I don't see what the problem is in terms of a group of people who feel that they've been isolated from politics, coming together in order to express themselves.
I think the problem is, if I might just interject, I think the problem is, especially in relation to what we've seen in Rochdale, right, is that clearly there, a Labour candidate felt the need to try to appease a large voter base by spouting a conspiracy theory. And the implication there is there's a heck of a lot of people with those anti-Semitic views within that constituency and voting. And are you potentially worried that you are helping to ignite that?
No, certainly not. What we did see in Rochdale was Azad Ali, who's not the sharpest knife in the kitchen, being used by the Labour Party to try and secure a vote, effectively dishonestly. Now, the issue there is that's why we're getting ourselves involved in politics, because we're not going to say something behind closed doors and something else in front of the public. We have a very clear and honest message, and unfortunately the Labour Party doesn't seem to operate in that way.
OK, all right, look, thank you very much for your time this evening. It will not be the last time that we talk before the next general election, I'm absolutely sure of it. Thank you very, very much, Mr Akunji there. Now, let's get the thoughts very quickly of my panel, and tonight we are joined by GB News presenter Nana Akua. I've also got Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, Jonathan Gullis, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Jonathan, do you think that Labour are now going to be at the mercy of quite a radical Islamist, anti-Semitic group of people?
Well, it's only Tuesday, and what a week it's already been for the Labour Party. I mean, they're completely imploding, to be perfectly frank with you, all up and down the country. And clearly, from what I thought was an extraordinary interview, and I think you did a very good job of pressing, and actually, we're giving all the cards on the table, I feel, in that interview you just conducted, that ultimately the Labour Party is absolutely desperate right now, and that I think we're going to have a lot of candidates saying a lot of mad things for the Labour Party in order to try and grab every vote they can, because they are clearly absolutely ruffled. And the fact that Sir Keir Starmer today had the audacity to tell people that he had been decisive, he was shamed by the national media, by his politicians from the left and the right, into actually taking action over what happened in Rochdale with the Labour candidate there, and it's utterly shameful that it came to that.
All right, Nana, I think the overarching point for me now is that if Labour are going to try to claw back support in some of these seats, they're going to have to try to appeal to individuals like that with those views.
Well, they've messed up, haven't they, in a way, because they've lost now the Muslim vote because people are hearing that they're not being pro-Palestine, and they've lost the Jewish vote because the Jewish people won't be voting for that, I suspect. That's what I think. But what I saw from Keir Starmer was what I would call performative morality, where he sort of appeared to be showing that he has acted decisively, well, 48 hours later, but I think it's because he didn't want to have two U-turns in one space, because he just rolled back on the green energy pledge as well. And I feel that the Labour Party are now showing who they are, and they certainly haven't got rid of anti-Semitism within their party at all.
Amy, I mean, this is an absolutely massive problem, I would argue, for society as a whole, the desperate plea to appease people who think that the Jews were responsible for the October 7th massacre.
Obviously, that is an outrageous view, and that is a conspiracy theory. But I think you shouldn't imagine that a conspiracy theory is going to placate Muslim voters. That's a little bit offensive, isn't it? I think that what it does appeal to is the people who are upset with the scenes coming out of Gaza, the images, the news, which is actually affecting voters across the political parties. I think that 80% of people are now for a ceasefire in Gaza. So it's not really a Labour-specific dissatisfaction. I think voters across the board are really unhappy with the way the politicians
ceasefire in Gaza, this is what I keep hearing. Hamas are firing rockets over Israel. The only reason why Israel doesn't look like Gaza is because Israel have an Iron Dome.
No, they've still got the hostages. They've still got hundreds of hostages being held.
Exactly. So maybe stop bombarding an area where people can't...
Hamas has returned people they've abducted.
We've got children eating animal feed and 19,000
There's also lots of doctored videos, and they've got actors, you know, doing incredible acting skills. One guy who seems to be a tourist advisor, a doctor, a musician, a soldier. I mean, he looks like a total clown all over TikTok.
OK, look, we are going to be returning to this at the top of the 10 because there are more developments coming out of the Labour Party that I can't wait for my panel to get stuck into as well. But, of course, Azhar Ali has since apologised for his comments. Here is the full list of candidates now standing in that Rochdale by-election. Azhar Ali now is an independent. Mark Coleman, independent. Simon Danchuk, Reform UK. Ian Donaldson, Liberal Democrat. Paul Ellison, Conservative. George Galloway, Workers' Party of Britain. Michael Howarth, independent. William Howarth, independent. Guy Otten, Green Party. Ravin Rodent Subordna, official monster raving loony party. And David Tully, independent. Right. Massive shift in tone now, because there's still plenty of time for you to grab the chance to win £18,000 in cash in our Great British Giveaway. Here's all the details you need to enter.
This is your chance to win £18,000 cash in our very latest Great British Giveaway. Cash to spend on anything you like. That's like having an extra £1,500 in your bank account each month for a whole year. What would you use that for?
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Still to come, in our fascinating People's Forum last night, Rishi Sunak said a vote for Reform UK is a vote for Keir Starmer. Is he right? Nigel Farage responds to that and the fact that we've got 22,000 asylum seekers we can't deport and you're still paying for. But up next, Suella Braverman, is she right that people in Britain are being made to feel guilty for being white? Former Labour spokesperson James Matthewson goes head-to-head with political commentator Aman Bagal. This is Patrick Christys tonight, and we're only on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show. Sunday mornings from 9:30.
We had Grant Shapps on last week. He was talking about how defence spending is now creeping up to 2.25% of GDP. Ben Wallace's predecessor suggested it should be 3%. We hear that we've got the smallest army, I think, since the Napoleonic Wars. Numbers are down. There's a question as to whether we can staff frigates in the Red Sea. Why haven't we sent aircraft carriers? What's your impression of the situation?
Well, I don't think it matters how much you spend, it's how effectively you spend it. And we spend it very ineffectively. We have lots of scandals about defence spending. And I think partly because of the monopoly position of some of our defence suppliers, we don't get good value and we don't get reliability. This latest story in the Telegraph is that HMS Diamond, which is our ship, which is out there defending the Red Sea, doesn't have the capability of firing a missile from the ship to the land, so it can't participate in the attacks on the Houthis. So in order that we can participate in the attacks, we're flying RAF aircraft from Cyprus, which is a very long way away. When I was Defence Secretary, I ordered cruise missiles for our nuclear-powered, but not nuclear-armed submarines. And I think we have 6 or possibly 7 of those. But last autumn, it was reported that 5 of those were out of commission, were not available. We have about 21 aggressive surface ships. So we've got 2 aircraft carriers, then we've got frigates, and we've got destroyers. But at any one time, you can count on about half of those not being available because they're under refit or whatever. So we have a minimal surface fleet now. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we're able to deploy a submarine to the area that can fire cruise missiles. Our 2 aircraft carriers, built at enormous expense, are sitting in Portsmouth.
Which seems to most people ludicrous,
well,
at least with what's going on.
It doesn't seem ludicrous to me.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, Nigel Farage weighs in on the bonkers Home Office migrant law, costing the British taxpayer £1.5 million a day. But first, it's time for our head-to-head. So, Suella Braverman has hit back at recent suggestions that the British countryside is racist after wildlife groups branded it a racist colonial white space that was dominated by white people. The former Home Sec has now slammed the report, writing, "We need to stop making white people feel guilty for being white. Critical race theory, white privilege and unconscious bias should be constantly debunked as left-wing militancy." And maybe she has a point. The BBC's Nihal Arthanayaka recently bemoaned his overwhelmingly white workplace, whining that it's really affecting me that I walk in and all I see is white people, which I imagine made his white colleagues feel great. And who can forget this jaw-dropping moment from Bridgerton actress Adjoa Andoh during last year's coronation coverage on ITV?
There is a bit of me that we've gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony. I'm very struck by that.
It's the royal family there. It's now trickling down to our kids too. Back in December, a new government report found that white working-class pupils are rapidly falling behind other students and are the group that the school leaders are now most concerned about. So tonight, I'm asking, is Suella Braverman right that people in Britain are being made to feel guilty for being white? Let me know what your thinking is. GBViews at gbnews.com, at GBNews on Twitter, and go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you those results in a few short moments. But now, going head-to-head, our founding chairman of Global Britain Centre, Aman Bagal, and former Labour spokesman James Matthewson. Thank you very, very much, chaps. Aman, do you think white people are being made to feel guilty for being white? Is that right?
Well, thank you, Patrick. Good to be on your show. But look, I think it's something very simple. This is a systemic attack which happens every few weeks on white British people and on this very nation. I think these pound shop lefty pygmies with a political acumen of a wet dishcloth are creating division amongst people. They're creating doubt with a narrative of us and them, and I think they're creating damage to the very national fabric of our society.
James, are you racked with white guilt?
I'm certainly not, Patrick. I'm absolutely not. It won't surprise you to know. And actually, I don't know anybody who is either. On the left, surprisingly. And I mean, you know, let me put my wet dishcloth down for a moment and tell you that actually, I think most people who are involved politically and who are passionate about things, you know, there are a spectrum of views there, but I've never encountered a single one of them. And I've encountered everything from, you know, the hard left right the way to the centre. I've yet to encounter anybody who, you know, at least espouses the fact that they feel guilty for being white. Having grown up in a rural neighbourhood myself, in a rural community in the northeast of England, you know, you don't get more rural than rural.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily whether or not, to be fair, James, it's not necessarily whether or not they actually do feel guilty for being white. I think the point is that they're being told that they should feel guilty for being white. And do you agree with that?
I don't feel that. I don't feel that pressure from anywhere. You know, I don't feel that pressure coming from anywhere that I am meant to feel anyway responsible. What I do see is an increased focus on talking about the past and the crimes of the past, the wrongs of the past, the history, because there is only one history, right or wrong, whether you like it or not. There are only facts, and teaching those facts and talking about them are important.
OK, all right, Aman.
Look, I think our British history is something that we need to be and we must be proud of. Look, people are being made to feel guilty. Look, if you want to be a historic revisionist, then be my guest. But the fact is that the greatest Briton that there ever was, that is Winston Churchill, when he gets boxed up in Parliament Square, that is the whole nation being made to feel guilty of what? Of what? Of standing up for freedom, fighting fascism? Really? When our countryside is labelled racist, is that not the country being made to feel racist, that you are racist by default, that you have to prove somehow that you have to be welcoming to others who are not white? Let's be honest. Every man and his dog wants to come to the UK, and we see that every single day on the English Channel. Thousands of people wanted to come across and hundreds of thousands coming across legally. Why do they want to come here? Because we are the world's most welcoming, warm-hearted nation on the face of this planet. That's the truth. There's no racism. I grew up in Welling. I can tell you what real racism is like. with the National Front there in the 90s. When everything is racist, nothing is racist.
Okay, go on, James.
You can't acknowledge that the National Front exists and that you experienced racism, and in the same breath say there is no such thing as racism in Britain. There is. Now, I understand what you're saying about when it comes to the countryside and the language used. As I understand it in the report that was put together that Suella Braverman's taken and politicised, you know, she's applied the terms left wing.
Hang on a minute. I'm not sure. Has she really politicised it? I mean, we've been told that our entire countryside is a racist cesspit of colonialism. I mean, I would argue that's pretty political.
I mean, look at it this way.
That's not what the report says. That's not what the report says. What it says is that people.
No, look. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. So this is what was said. Cultural barriers reflect that in the UK, it is white British cultural values that have been embedded into the design and management of green spaces and into society's expectations of how people should be engaging with them. What on earth does that even mean? I think that means that the left fringe elements want to put people like me, who are immigrants into this country, into our little identity politics tick boxes, that we somehow do not adhere to whatever is white British values. You have British values, and that is the end of that. There's no white British values. There's no Indian British values. There are British values.
OK. All right. Well, both of you. Go on quickly, James. Are you going to go into the countryside and take the knee?
I grew up in the British countryside. I'm proud of the British countryside. Right. I love the British countryside and British values, but there is racism present there, as there is everywhere. And where there's less diversity, there is more racism.
Stop dividing people.
OK. All right, both of you, thank you very much. That's exactly what we do it for, a proper head-to-head. Thank you. That is, of course, the founding chairman of Global Britain Centre, Aman Bagal, former Labour spokesperson, James Mathewson. Look, who do you agree with? OK, is Suella right that people in Britain are being made to feel guilty for being white? Christian on Twitter says absolutely yes. Just look at all the white guilt and white privilege literature being churned out by academics and campaigners. Rory says it's never-ending guilt trip for political power and to shame Brits into accepting radical changes to our country. Maureen says, I don't feel one bit guilty about who I am, be it my sex, colour or anything else. All right, Maureen. And your verdict is now in. 96% of you agree with Suella that Brits are being made to feel guilty for being white. 4% of you say that we are not. Coming up, as a runaway royals, Harry and Meghan launched their brand new website, Sussex.com. Are they now trying to cash in on the monarchy even more? Former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole joins me soon. But next, many Tories have lurched to reform UK. Rishi Sunak sounded the alarm on GB News last night.
And that's what you have to remember. A vote for anyone who's not me, who's not your Conservative candidate, is a vote to put him, with his values and his party, in power.
OK, Nigel Farage joins me to respond to that next. And why is it impossible for the Home Office to remove 22,000 illegal migrants that you're still paying for? It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Loads coming your way. The man who spoke up for the vaccine injured to Rishi Sunak shortly. Also, former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole on Harry and Meghan's controversial new website. But it is time now for Nigel Farage. And it's been revealed today that a so-called crazy contradiction in Suella Braverman's small boat laws has left the Home Office powerless to deport or grant asylum to 22,000 migrants already in Britain. So it means that at least half of them are left in limbo and they will be living in hotels, and it is costing the taxpayer £1.5 million a day. The problem has been caused by the Illegal Migration Act, supposedly, which requires the government to remove illegal migrants but only applies to those who came to Britain from July last year. But the same legislation also bans the government from granting asylum to those who entered illegally on or after March 2023. We can see why we now have a problem, can't we? Nigel, your reaction to this madness?
Well, it was classic, wasn't it? You know, Conservative Party in trouble, something must be done. And Rishi Sunak stands up on the 7th of March behind a Stop the Boats slogan and says, anyone that comes to the country once the illegal migration bill has been passed will be detained, deported, and will not be allowed to stay. That is exactly what he said. And we finished up in this odd limbo land that anyone that came between the 7th of March and the 20th of July suddenly can't claim asylum, but also can't be deported. There's 22,000 of them, costing, as you say, £1.5 million a day. It just goes to show it's bad law, drafted quickly, and we find ourselves in a mess. But the worst part is this. After July the 20th, when we were promised, once this was law, that nobody could stay, a committee meeting 2 weeks ago, and there we had James Cleverly in front of the Home Affairs Committee with Rycroft, his most senior civil servant, and Tim Loughton, the MP, the Tory MP, asked a question, what has happened to those who've arrived since July the 20th? The answer came, they're all in the asylum process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and the fact is, Nigel, which is that even under all of this stuff now, if a man from Afghanistan came to the UK tomorrow and had his asylum claim rejected and then killed someone, we really still could not deport them anyway. So the whole thing's a bit redundant, isn't it?
Well, the whole thing's a lie. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That what was happening here was the Prime Minister and Home Secretary were making us promises that they were being told at the time by the Home Office, and I revealed this last week in the Rwanda files, they knew weren't actually achievable. And it's that level of dishonesty you can't get through. And, you know, Sunak can stand before a people's forum But it's not stop the votes anymore. It's we've reduced the numbers. Only 30,000 came last year. Let's stand up and cheer. You know, I'm sorry, but we are in a government of spin and deception.
OK, so this is the moment last night that Rishi Sunak was asked about the threat of reform.
And that's what you have to remember. A vote for anyone who's not me, who's not your Conservative candidate, is a vote to put him, with his values and his party, in power.
That's him being Keir Starmer. I mean, Nigel, do you run the risk of being responsible for a Keir Starmer government?
Oh, goodness me. I've heard this at every election since 1997. I'm getting very, very bored with it. Of course, it's what you get with first-past-the-post politics. I know I'm rubbish. I know you don't want to vote for me. But if you vote for the other guy, somebody else will get in. I mean, the whole thing's so negative and so ghastly. You know, in 2015, Cameron used the same line. The truth was, the 4 million votes that I got as leader of UKIP, you know, leading that people's army, actually, we took more Labour voters than Tory voters. Cameron would not have had a majority had it not been for the UKIP vote. This time round, it's different. This time round, the vast majority of Reform voters are 2019 Conservative voters. But you know what? Rishi's going to lose anyway. It makes no blooming difference. Starmer is, unless something dramatic happens, and who knows what could happen in Rochdale, etc. But basically, when the punters see that Sunak's going to lose anyway, that argument about splitting the vote disappears completely.
Well, last night, Nigel, Rishi Sunak was also confronted by a man who was representing those injured and killed by the COVID-19 vaccine. Richard Tice then told me later that evening that Reform UK would hold a public inquiry into COVID vaccine harms. He announced a policy live on air.
Commit, and I don't think any other party will, I commit, we need an inquiry into the vaccine injuries. And that is my commitment here this evening for the first time to you. That will be in our contract with the people.
Is that a vote winner?
Well, I have to say, Mr. Tice is getting very assertive, and I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's really good. Is it a vote winner? Do you know what? Whether it's a vote winner or not, it's dead right. It's dead right. Because we need a lot. There's a lot we need to know. Don't forget, Patrick, we were told, take the vaccine, the so-called vaccine, right? And you won't catch COVID. Take the vaccine and you won't pass COVID on. Both of those things were totally, completely untrue. We were told the vaccine was safe in every way. Frankly, it had not been through anything like the normal testing for any kind of vaccine in terms of trials. And now we learn that the so-called vaccine, do you know there are pensioners now, elderly people on their 7th jab? That is not the kind of vaccine you and I grew up with, where you have a vaccine once and you're inoculated for life. So I do think there needs to be a massive investigation, not just into harms that were caused by the vaccine, and all vaccines cause side effects, and we know that. But there do seem to be an alarming number of people, young men in particular, who've developed myocarditis and other heart conditions. I'm not getting conspiratorial about this, but let's have it out in the open. But I want to know as well why we were lied to. I want to know why they were trying to vaccinate kids of primary school age when COVID posed almost no threat to them whatsoever. And, you know, Boris Johnson and his government put in place an absolutely draconian system, not just of lockdowns, but of £500 million of taxpayers' money spent on newspaper wraparounds, on adverts. Remember, can you look into his eyes? If you don't take the vaccine, you'll kill your grandparents. It all turned out to be completely untrue. This needs a proper, full public inquiry. Richard is 100% right.
OK. Well, Nigel, look, thank you very much for that. And it's a timely reminder that in about 20 minutes' time now or so, we'll be speaking to that individual, John Watt, who spoke up and absolutely railroaded the Prime Minister last night, speaking, as he would say anyway, for the vaccine injured. He's got a heck of a lot more that he wants to say, and we are going to give him the platform in order to do that here this evening. So we'll have to wait and see what he says. Nigel, thank you very, very much. Right, OK. Meanwhile, the Department for Health and Social Care has obviously previously said more than 144 million COVID COVID vaccines have been given in England, which has helped the country to live with COVID and save thousands of lives. All vaccines being used in the UK have undergone robust clinical trials and have met the Medicines and Health Products Regulatory Agency's strict standards of safety, effectiveness and quality. So that is their response to that. Now, another Labour parliamentary candidate has been suspended for comments about Israel. The tape of what he said is absolutely shocking. I have it for you and I will play it for you in full very, very soon. But next, after launching their brand new website, sussex.com, should Harry and Meghan actually be stripped of their royal titles because they are shamelessly dining out on them now? Plus, is it true that Harry and Queen Camilla couldn't bear to be in the same room together, even after the King announced his cancer diagnosis? Former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole, he's here, he's got the answers. It's Patrick Christys tonight. I'll see you in a tick.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, my interview with last night's viral vaccine victim that tore into the Prime Minister. But first, it's time for the Royal Dispatch. And overnight, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle launched their brand new website, sussex.com. So they've named it after the royal titles. The royal crest is the centrepiece. It's like they've never even left, isn't it? Well, the website has now raised alarm bells, with one royal source telling the Daily Mail they're going to have real trouble with the use of Sussex. It is a royal title, and if there is any hint of commercialism about this, then it will be shut down. It's just staggering they can't see how gauche it is. I'm joined now by the former BBC royal correspondent, Michael Cole. Michael, thank you very much. Should we just strip him of the royal titles? Are they trying to cash in on them? What's going on?
Well, Patrick, good evening. The first thing to say is that it's illegal, repeat that, it's illegal to use a royal title or even the name of a royal palace for commercial purposes with punishments attached if that is transgressed. You may remember that when they made a hurried exit, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex with their newly born son, Prince Archie, to Canada and then to California, which may have been her intended destination all along, they were told that they would keep their titles HRH, His Royal Highness, Her Royal Highness, but they were not permitted to use them in their work. They could be the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but they were explicitly warned not to use their royal status for commercial purposes. Now we see, as you're showing us now, this new website. And I think that that was obviously written by somebody who was intoxicated with the exuberance of their own verbosity, to use a phrase that Winston Churchill once coined, because it's very verbose, it's very grandiloquent, and it's very overwritten. But what it makes it clear is that they've dumped their original name, which was Archwell. I thought that that was probably a tribute to their son Archie, but arch also means facetious, and it also means roguish. So what they were doing about calling it Archwell in the first place, we do not know. But this will not have gone down well, Patrick, at Buckingham Palace. They'll be watching things very closely. And if there is any transgression, they will certainly be taking sanctions.
So just to clarify, Michael, you think that what they've done might be illegal?
Well, it is illegal. There's a law against doing it. It's sort of lèse-majesté. You must not undermine the status of the monarch and his immediate family. It's not allowed. Otherwise, people would be, any number of products would be associating themselves with royal personages, and it would be, this is before the age of AI, artificial intelligence, but you could see what could be done if there were not statutes in place to prevent it.
Well, hey, fair enough. I imagine Harry and Meghan will deny any illegality, but we will go to them for comment. I'm just going to also ask you, of course, about Prince Harry reportedly not wanting to be in the same room as his stepmother, Queen Camilla, when he made that 24-hour mad dash across the pond last week to visit King Charles after that shock cancer diagnosis. He's labelled Camilla dangerous in the past, a villain. That was all in spare, wasn't it? What do you reckon, then? Do you think he couldn't stand to be in the same room as her?
Yeah, well, you've summed it up rather well. He also said that Camilla leaves bodies in the street. It's pretty lurid, isn't it? Lurid language. And, of course, he did identify her as the third person in his parents' marriage, and he did resent it. And, in fact, both the brothers at an early stage, before their father made it clear that he was going to get married, and then we see them, the King and Queen, and indeed Meghan and Harry in happier times, he did make it clear, or both brothers made it clear, they said anybody but Camilla. Well, it turned out rather differently. With regard to his dash over the pole, I mean, apart from collecting 11,000 air miles, I can't see what it was achieved by coming here, which could not be achieved, as we are talking, by a video link of 45 minutes. He could have done exactly the same thing. And, of course, when somebody is suffering from cancer, the important thing in the treatment is not to contract any infections. Well, Harry had been at 30,000 feet in a cigar tube, pressurized, breathing the same air as 25 to 150 other people. And you can bet your life that the usual greeting of royal men, a kiss on the cheek, was not on offer. When the prodigal son returned to Clarence House, I don't think there was going to be any embracing there. No. So it's difficult to see what was achieved by that. I think he was sincere. I just think, as so often, Patrick, he's got a tin ear for these things. He reads it wrong. And I think whoever is giving him a PR advice, either it's not being listened to, or he's giving the wrong advice.
Just quite quickly, Michael, because we're a bit pressed for time now. Are you concerned that maybe the King is more ill than we're being led to believe at the moment?
Well, you know, it's cancer. It's cancer, Patrick. It's not a good thing at any time. I give Buckingham Palace full marks. They were candid from the beginning when he went into hospital. They were candid that cancer had been detected. We haven't been told what it is. The King is entitled to his privacy. I think that when he realises how much good has been by his candour, by his frankness, when he sees the reaction of people. I think he will take us into his confidence. Okay. It's obviously serious, and I tell you what's really sad, because the first full year of his reign was hugely successful. Right. Germany, France, Kenya, the coronation. So terrible bad luck.
Absolutely. Look, Michael, thank you, as ever, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Michael Cole there. Coming up, a TV exclusive with the man who's had the entire nation talking vaccine victim. It's John Watt.
When you look into my eyes, Rishi Sunak, and I want you to look at the pain, the trauma, and the regret I have in my eyes.
Yeah, don't miss that. But next, it's another Labour candidate suspended over shocking anti-Israel slurs. Has Keir Starmer really cleaned up the party? I suspect not. More absolutely damning revelations in just a minute.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Yes, across Scotland it is going to be a chilly night with some frost likely, but for most of us it's a cloudy, wet and mild story because of a weather system that pushed its way in earlier today and has already brought a fair amount of rain across many parts of England and Wales, staying cloudy and wet across many parts through the night, and rain also pushing into Northern Ireland too as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. However, across much of Scotland, clear skies here, and with that then temperatures taking a bit of a drop, falling a few degrees below freezing, so a fairly harsh frost here, but much milder elsewhere where we have those cloudy skies. As we go through tomorrow itself then, another grey gloomy day for most of us. Further outbreaks of rain could be heavy, could turn persistent for a time in the south, and some persistent rain pushing in then across parts of Scotland with some snow over the highest ground. Greatest chance of seeing any sunshine tomorrow will be in the far north of Scotland, but here's where it's also going to be chilliest. Elsewhere, a pretty mild day with highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius. Mild for most on Thursday, could be even milder than on Wednesday, but again cloudy with further outbreaks of rain, and these could be pretty heavy at times. Could see some localised impacts. Notice some heavier rain pushing into the south as we go into the afternoon. At the moment, Friday does look like it will be drier with some bright or sunny spells, but then the rain returns in time for Saturday. Bye-bye, I'll see you again soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamon, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, and Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
in Israel again, you know.
They allowed that massacre, and that gives them the green light to do whatever they bloody want.
Labour is blowing up tonight as the party axes two election candidates in a blazing anti-Semitism row. And remember her? Partygate turned Labour Chief of Staff Sue Gray is bang in trouble as well. I'll reveal why. Plus,
why are the people who are in charge, who told us all to do the right thing, have left us all to rot?
the man giving a voice to the vaccine injured speaks out live on this show. I will also have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages tonight with GB News star Nana Acquia, Tory MP Jonathan Gullis and author Amy Nicole Turner. And who is to blame here? Jeremy Vine. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Labour's implosion and a voice for the vaccine injured. Next.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that a former Labour MP who's seeking re-election has been administratively suspended from the party over anti-Semitic remarks he made during a party meeting. The Jewish Labour movement has condemned the comments Graham Jones reportedly made about British-Israeli Jews, saying they were appalling and unacceptable. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer withdrew his party's support for another candidate, Azhar Ali, who was recorded suggesting Israel had used the Hamas attack as a pretext to invade Gaza. The Conservative Minister Grant Shapps accused the Labour leader of taking the public for fools by promoting a candidate who he says has expressed the most atrocious racism against Jewish people. But Sir Keir Starmer insisted the party has changed under his leadership.
Well, those comments were appalling, and that is why we took decisive action. It is virtually unprecedented to withdraw support for a candidate in the way that I withdrew support for this candidate yesterday. That's what a changed Labour Party is all about. And of course, any allegation will be fully investigated by the party. But the important thing is the decisive action that's been taken to make it absolutely clear that this is a changed Labour Party.
Sir Keir Starmer. Now, the Court of Appeal is speedily quashing convictions of ex-post office workers under a new fast-track approach. That's according to the most senior judge in England and Wales. Justice Baroness Carr says unopposed cases are being resolved in a matter of weeks. It comes after 42-year-old Jacqueline Falcon, a victim of the scandal, was the latest to be fully cleared after just a 30-minute hearing in London. Ms Falcon's case is now the 71st conviction to be quashed by the Court of Appeal. Employers and landlords who allow illegal migrants to work for them or rent their properties will face much tougher penalties from today. The fines for such actions have risen to a maximum of £45,000 per worker for a first breach. Landlords also now face increased penalties of £5,000 per lodger and £10,000 per occupier for a first breach. Ministers believe the crackdown will help reduce the incentives for illegal migrants crossing into the UK. And the sad news tonight that the veteran BBC broadcaster Steve Wright, one of the most familiar radio voices of our lifetimes, has died at the age of 69. Tributes from numerous stars and fellow DJs, including Sarah Cox, Ken Bruce, Simon Mayo and Tony Blackburn, have all been posted online. Jo Whiley said tonight in her show, he was the soundtrack of our lives, wasn't he? And today was World Radio Day as well. The BBC radio presenter Gary Davis said tonight, absolutely shocked and devastated to hear of the passing of radio legend Steve Wright. I can't believe he's not with us anymore. We've lost a broadcasting giant. Steve Wright, who died today at the age of 69. Good show, Steve. For the latest stories, sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
If you listen closely, you can hear the ticking time bomb of Labour getting ready to implode. Remember this from Sir Keir Starmer?
It's not the sidelines, it's behind him that the fire's coming in, Mr. Speaker. And he can try and blame the Labour Party all he wants. The difference is, I've changed my party, he's bullied by his party.
Then this happened.
Therefore, is it now not the time for the Prime Minister to admit that he has the blood of thousands of innocent people on his hands, and for him to commit to demanding an immediate ceasefire?
Now we've got Rochdale, where Azhar Ali was getting his backside handed to him by the pro-Palestine brigade.
Murderers, that's what you are. Listen to me. No, you're wrong. Say maybe won't listen. Free, free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
So he decided to try to appease them by saying that the Jews let the October 7th massacre happen so they could obliterate Gaza.
The Egyptians are saying that they warned Israel 10 days earlier, 2 weeks earlier. Americans warned them 2 weeks before. A day before. There's something's happening, right? Netanyahu, right, deliberately, he was in political trouble. He's in, he's in political trouble. He cashed it. They deliberately, I believe that, and I've said it publicly. They deliberately took the security off. Yeah. They allowed the massacre, and it was a massacre of 1,200 innocent people, right? They allowed that massacre, and that gives them the green light to do whatever they bloody want.
Well, Keir Starmer does the old hokey-cokey, sends out the big guns to defend Mr Ali.
Is Labour happy with a candidate who thinks that?
Well, no, that's why he's issued a complete retraction and apology. It was wrong to say that. He should never have said it. And it's right that he has completely apologised now, and he himself said it was wrong to say it. And that's the right thing to do.
So he will be your candidate in Rochdale?
In the upcoming by-election, yes, he will.
Then he cuts ties with him and says that he's taken strong and decisive action.
Those comments were appalling, and that is why we took decisive action.
And then boom, in comes another candidate, Graham Jones, talking about effing Israel.
In Israel again, you know, and I'm sure that all these people think that when they go home, but you will not get Israel over the line unless we go at them hard.
Well, why is there British people in IDF?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, this has been raised, and I'm going to take this up because we have a simple rule.
You're allowed to get a flight there as well.
You do, unless there is a military alliance between us and that particular country, NATO or whatever, then or an individual one, you should not be fighting. No British person should be fighting for any other country. At all, full stop. It's against the law and should be locked up.
Well, now he's gone too. Of course, he's got previous. Apparently, he called an Israeli envoy a tosser, ironically, during a Labour Friends of Israel event. How deep does this rot go? Who else was at this infamous Lancashire Labour den of alleged anti-Semitism? But the implosion is now running deeper. Yes, that's right. Sue Gray, remember her, the old Partygate enthusiast, turned Labour Chief of Staff? Well, apparently, a union has now launched an investigation after her inquiry into the Labour Green U-turn left staff in tears. She's accused of violating Labour staffers' workplace rights, inspecting their phones and denying them the right to due process. It is absolutely 100% worth noting that so far Keir Starmer has surged ahead in the polls by saying nothing, U-turning on anything remotely controversial and letting the Tories run themselves into the ground, which they absolutely have done. But now he's facing a massive test of his leadership. If he'd have been in power the day that Hamas committed their atrocity, he'd have lost about half of his front bench. And now he's polled a Labour candidate in Rochdale. Starmer is bang in trouble, and there is a feeling now that this is going to get much worse before it gets any better. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. I am joined by the wonderful GB News presenter, GB News star Nana Acquia. I also have Tory MP Jonathan Gullis and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Jonathan, I'll start with you. Keir Starmer is bang in trouble here, isn't he, at the moment? Risk of an implosion?
Well, what a bitter, ugly, a repugnant and abhorrent man Graham Jones is for saying the most outrageous things. And actually, it gets worse than this, Patrick. My predecessor, Ruth Smeeth, who suffered greatly under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership with the anti-Semitism that she was on the receiving end of, actually, only last year, gave a supportive quote for Graham Jones. In fact, she said, week in, week out, Graham challenging anti-Jewish hate and demanding that more was done. And that was, you know, tweeted out by him as an endorsement to why he should be the candidate. So clearly, you know, now she's in the House of Lords, now a shadow minister in Keir Starmer's government. It just shows you that the front bench of the Labour Party has very poor judgment about the individuals they think they should back, and the fact that these Labour candidates are willing to say absolutely anything to anyone in any room in order to get their vote.
Look, Keir Starmer hinges his election chances on convincing people that he's changed the Labour Party and that he's rooted out anti-Semitism, and that, frankly, is up in the air tonight, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely up in there. And he literally tries to pacify everybody by literally saying nothing at all. But it's like a can of worms that he's been sitting on the lid, hoping that nothing will spew out, and now they're all coming out to roost, all coming out saying absolutely absurd things. I mean, that Asad Ali, what he said, my 15-year-old daughter would listen to that and say what a load of nonsense that is. But he was prepared to stand by this person because he's almost balancing the odds and working out whether, well, if I do this, then I'm going to have that, and if I do this, then he's going to lose all of it because he's trying to satisfy too many masters. And that is the problem with the Labour Party, and that's what he's been hiding, and now we're getting to see it. Now he has to speak.
And Amy, you know, look, we're making a decision at some point, whenever that is, about who we want to run the country. And Keir Starmer, at this moment in time, I think, is proving that he couldn't run a bath.
I think, yeah, he's facing a lot of problems. I think he created this problem for himself when he endorsed the collective punishment of Gazans, when he said he completely signed off on them not having their food and electricity and water. However, I think we need to be careful to not misuse the term anti-Semitism to protect Israel from any necessary criticism, because I think we sometimes edge towards that. So we can't conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, because that's going to just...
Jews in the media?
Well, it depends what people are saying, doesn't it?
Of course, but it depends what they're saying. But at the moment, I feel a lot of people are getting tarred with this brush of anti-Semitism. They're scared to say things in criticism of the Israeli government for fear of being labelled an anti-Semite. And I think it undermines the fight against anti-Semitism if you constantly say anything, any remark anyone makes about Israel is anti-Semitic, because it's not really that simple.
You need to qualify that, though. So give me an example of a remark that you think has been wrongly labelled as anti-Semitic.
People are terrified to criticise Israel.
Well, give me an example.
Right at the beginning, they were labelled as anti-Semitic,
but this behaviour,
uttering anything. And I think right now, only 15% of
Asad Ali made some comments. I believe they were anti-Semitic. Do you believe that what he said was anti-Semitic when he said that basically
when he
Israel...
peddled the conspiracy theory?
Yeah, do you think that was anti-Semitic?
I think that was anti-Semitic, yes, of course.
OK, so what about Graham Jones when he said F Israel and all that sort of thing? Would you say that was anti-Semitic?
I would say that was... Well, this is when I get confused, because a lot of the sentiments in there, of course, the overwhelming majority of people have been absolutely appalled by the behaviour of Israel. Yeah. So how can you... How can you express...
Can I just interrupt? The concern for me, and I think everyone in this, right, is that the second that you close the door and you tell a load of Labour candidates this is a behind-closed-doors meeting, all of a sudden, well, there's been 2 scalps from that meeting already. Guido Fawkes are desperately trying to find out who else was there. You know, it does appear, doesn't it, that it doesn't take much, really. A little scratch at the surface, and all of a sudden it's F Israel, it's Jews control the media. Nothing's changed.
Well, I think what we're going to find out over the coming weeks and maybe months ahead is Labour candidates who have already been selected have been saying these things, and there are people who are willing to at least give eyewitness testimonies, if not having recordings, and it goes to show that anti-Semitism is still rotting away at the heart of the Labour Party, and that Keir Starmer can try and dress it up any way that he wants to. But that man, Sir Keir Starmer, stood side by side Jeremy Corbyn to make him Prime Minister of this country, both in 2017 and 2019. So Keir Starmer has got mud all over his hands as much as anyone else in the Labour Party.
Now, look, Keir Starmer, as we've heard multiple times tonight on this show and over the course of the day on this channel, is saying he's changed the Labour Party, he's taken swift and decisive action. There is another issue brewing the Labour Party. We've not got a huge amount of time for this, but Nana, on Sue Gray.
Oh, delicious. Delicious.
Go on. Well, didn't Boris call her Psycho Sue Gray? Or so we heard that apparently that was his nickname for her. Yes, because Sue Gray, it turns out that she's been bullying people and talking to people in such a bad way. They've been crying. She's demanded stuff from their WhatsApps and everything else. Yeah, Psycho...
Do you know what's interesting, though? When Dominic Raab did something very similar. People were like, he's a firm boss, go him on this very sofa. And it was fine for him to be very firm and be quite
to be fair,
but now it's a Labour person. You're all like, oh, yeah, she's a psycho.
Well, to be fair,
Labour staff
one of the
making
things
it
Dominic Raab got quite angry about was the civil servant nearly handed Gibraltar back to the Spanish, right? And he raised his voice over that. I mean, we fought wars over this kind of stuff, right? And he got booted out because of that. Well, I mean, Sue Gray, apparently, has been taking people's... She would probably deny this. Has been taking people's phones off them and demanding to check them and denying them their workers' rights.
My point is just that either you like a firm boss or you don't, and you've got to be a bit consistent with that, because I don't feel your appraisal of Sue Gray.
That's rubbish.
Dominic Raab was the Foreign Secretary, so the decisions that were being made...
So
and
he
the
can
things
be a bully.
No, because he's not a bully at all. The things that... I actually worked on the Ready for Raab leadership campaign. I know Dominic very well. He is firm but fair, and he expects high standards of his staff, but also at the same time is extremely compassionate and caring. And I've got a beautiful handwritten letter of someone who was not even an MP, just some grunt on the ground trying to get people to support him, and he went out of his way to write me his handwritten note, invite me to his house to say thank you for all the support that I showed him. Sue Gray has gone in. Sue Gray's not got the cover of the Cabinet Office anymore. She's got Labour staffers themselves complain about her. And the best thing about Sue Gray is apparently is that when a 30-minute meeting is booked in, it lasts 30 minutes. If that's the standard now to be a decent chief of staff, then God help this country.
You can't compare Sue Gray anyway with that, because Dominic Raab was saying that these people were complaining about the way he was looking at me, and he didn't answer questions straight away and stuff like that. That's not the same thing.
We're going to draw a line to this now because we've got a heck of a lot to get through. I know a lot of our viewers are waiting for our next guest on tenterhooks, but just before that, Azhar Ali has since apologised for his comments. Graham Jones is yet to comment on the allegations that we played you. Here are the candidates standing in the Rochdale by-election. Azhar Ali, Labour Party. Mark Coleman, Independent. Simon Danchuk, Reform UK. Ian Donaldson, Liberal Democrat. Paul Ellison, Conservative. George Galloway, Workers' Party of Britain. Michael Howarth, Independent. William Howarth, Independent. Guy Otten, Green Party. Raving Rodent Subordinate, Official Monster Raving Loony Party. And David Tully, Independent. Right, in another massive handbrake turn, fancy the chance to win £18,000 in our Great British Giveaway? Well, you have to be in it to win it, and here's how you can get your entry in.
We want to turn 2024 into 2020 more with your chance to win £18,000 in cash to spend however you like. You really could be the next big winner of our Great British Giveaway. Phil from West Yorkshire won our last one.
I never won a penny in my life.
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, wow.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Coming up, I'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages as they land. But next is something that I know a lot of our viewers and listeners have been waiting for. The man who just will not be silenced, even in front of the Prime Minister.
When you look into my eyes, Rishi Sunak, and I want you to look at the pain, the trauma and the regret I have in my eyes.
John Watt is live in a TV exclusive, and I will ask him, why are the vaccine injured still being mocked, derided and ignored? This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Don't move.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of three abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves, People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures, endless red tape. As Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's farm in Britain, they've simply had enough, and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Last night at GB News' People's Forum with the Prime Minister, there was one standout viral moment.
My name is John Watt, and I'm one of the COVID vaccine injured in this country. I want you to look into my eyes, Rishi Sunak, and I want you to look at the pain, the trauma, and the regret I have in my eyes. We have been left with no help at all. Why are the people who are in charge, who told us all to do the right thing, have left us all to rot?
So there is a vaccine compensation scheme that's in place, as you alluded to, in the NHS. Obviously, everyone individually will work through their cases. It's difficult for me to comment on anyone's individual case, I'm sure.
Well, John's comments actually got a round of applause from the audience and a massive reaction online. So that man is John Watt, who had, I believe, 3 vaccines and developed a heart condition that nearly killed him.
Before I was fit and healthy and used to do boxing, would do CrossFit, you know, do a lot of weight training and, you know, keep myself in good shape. When I had my 5 booster, that's when my world just totally crumbled.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up in a wheelchair. It nearly killed him, OK? He is a voice for the vaccine injured and those who are sadly no longer here to make their voice heard. He thinks people have been lied to and betrayed over vaccine safety, and he wants the government to take responsibility. I'm very pleased to say that he joins us now to tell us his story. John, thank you very much. I know we've spoken a couple of times today and it's taken it out of you, especially considering your condition. Could you just explain to our viewers and listeners exactly what went on with you then in terms of the vaccine, please?
Man, I'd be here all night if I was to tell you what has happened to me, but just like you said, I was bedridden for 14 months in a wheelchair. I had numerous conditions, POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, stomach issues, I've got neurological issues now. So people might have seen me moving back and forth in the video and they think, you know, that unfortunately that's my problem now. When I stand up, I feel like I'm dizzy and I'm off balance. So if you see me moving about or anything like that, unfortunately, it's how I cope with things now. for me doing that last night, it's adrenaline and a heart issue does not go well, Patrick, and it took a lot out of me to do that and drive down there, and I seen an opportunity, and unfortunately I had to take it.
Well, you certainly did, and you are still being demonised, OK? And earlier on today, Kevin Maguire, who's a journalist, well, he said this. We'll play the clip.
I think you would, but did you watch the bit where some anti-vaxxer went on and on and on at Sunak? I think the two of them, I think, why would Keir Starmer subject himself to that?
Yeah, John, I mean, how does that make you feel being called an anti-vaxxer?
First of all, who is that guy? I don't know who he is, but anyway, what is an anti-vaxxer, Patrick? Can somebody tell me? Can somebody elaborate what an anti-vaxxer is? Because I took 3 of them, mate. I took 3 of these vaccines, so does that man have any idea how stupid he sounds at this point in time by saying that? It's, you know, this is the terminology, the language people are using just now, saying anti-vax and all this nonsense. To be completely honest with you, the narrative is safe and effective, in my opinion, is no longer. Because, to be honest with you, Patrick, I ask anyone, and I call out anybody in this matter, someone show me the data to show that this saved one single life. I'm asking anybody, because since the rollout, there has been a massive increase in people dying. And one of the reasons I spoke out, Patrick, is because I'm not going to be a died suddenly statistic. And that's the honest answer. And these debates and everything need to be spoke about, and the vaccine injured and bereaved need to be heard. And I just can't believe that that's where we're at. You know, to call me a anti-vaxxer, honestly, I don't want to use the wrong language here, you know, but...
Yeah, OK, well, look, as you know, the government goes, well, it's saved many lives, etc. But can I get your views on the compensation scheme and where you're at with it? Because that was one of the things you were really trying to hammer home to the Prime Minister, wasn't it? Because you feel completely left behind and completely forgotten about, and that it's been left to you, actually, really, and other people like you to really bang the drum to trying to get justice.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at with it, I've recently just got my doctor's notes. It's taken about 6 months to get those doctor's notes. But I know certain people who have, you know, if I speak to all the vaccine injured in the UK, there's only been a very, very small percentage that have had a payout. And I'm talking about people that have had spinal strokes, you know, people who have got heart conditions now. What is 60%? Look, we're no further forward than we were a year ago. We're in the exact same position where we were a year ago, Patrick, and it's ridiculous. And when I stood in front of him yesterday and I told him to look me in the eye, you know, Rishi Sunak, you've now been notified that we exist. It's not the first time, mate. And see, to be honest with you, this goes to all the politicians, because this is a political issue. This is a message to you all, because the longer you bury your head in the sand, this isn't gone away. You want to talk about the post office scandal? This is bigger. This is global. It's getting bigger and bigger. You know, it's getting worse. And to be honest with you, you can't run away from it any longer.
Well, John, can I just say thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for articulating your point, letting us know what happened to you, emphasising what happened to you. I think putting a few people. I
just want to say as well, Patrick, you know, I appreciate you bringing me on and that, but you know, GBN, nothing against you, Patrick, but GBN, you guys were the only channel we had our trust in, and there was only one that we had a voice. And see now, I'm hoping these take it on board, because let's be honest, mate, I've just put your channel back on the map here. You know, because you know why you get so many views? Because you spoke the truth last night. You showed the truth. And to be honest, I wouldn't have got on that show if I told you exactly what I was going to ask Rishi Sunak. He didn't know that question was coming. He thought I was going to talk about politics.
Well, neither did we, John. Neither did we. And this is another thing that's going around online about, like, oh, well, we vetted the questions. We had no idea any of the questions that were going to be asked last night at all, and you made your voice clear. And I appreciate you coming on, John, and I do hope that we can talk again soon, all right? And obviously, take care, all right? So that is John Watt there. Thank you very, very much. So, yes, all right. Look, meanwhile, the Department for Health and Social Care has previously said more than 144 million COVID vaccines have been given in England, which has helped the country to live with COVID and save thousands of lives. All vaccines being used in the UK have undergone robust clinical trials and have met the Medicines and Health Products Regulatory Agency strict standards of safety, effectiveness and quality. We reached out to the NHS Business Services Authority for comment, but are yet to get a response. However, previously, they have said, we are continuing to work with healthcare providers to assess the remaining records as a priority and to highlight that any delay in receiving medical records impacts the progress of vaccine damage payment scheme claims to the independent medical assessment stage. Right, OK. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. As GBNews presenter Anna Aquia, Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, Jonathan Gullis, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Jonathan, look, I've got to ask you, why is your government so slow to give these people payouts, then?
Look, I think John gave a very moving account, and I'm very sorry to hear the situation that he's found himself in. Look, I was one of those who proudly promoted the vaccine because ultimately we were told by the scientists that this was going to help stopping the spread and ultimately build our resilience to the fact that if we did catch COVID, that it would prevent people ending up in hospital. I think that was entirely the right thing to do. And as you heard, that 144 million of those have gone out to date. But I don't deny the fact that there's huge frustration. I think John was fair in pointing out that with the post office scandal and the payment scheme that's meant to be happening there, that clearly bureaucracy is getting in the way. I'm more than happy to sit down with people like John to hear firsthand about why payments aren't happening quick enough, because ultimately it's about up to £120,000 that people are entitled to. If they're entitled to it, they should be getting it.
I mean, people like John are demonised. They're called anti-vaxxers, which is ridiculous because they're three of the things for a start. So he's obviously not an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
People like him are demonised, and they will feel, I mean, shunned from society, laughed at, scoffed by people who maybe have had a vaccine and are fine, and that's not the case for everybody.
No, they absolutely shouldn't. Vaccine injured are very real. They're very much there. But in the same way, nothing is risk-free. Planes crash. Those people are real that have been involved in that plane accident, but we still see flying is safe. The vaccine is still safe.
But they tend to get compensation or insurance.
But I think the problem with the compensation is probably because it's extremely difficult to prove that the vaccine caused that stroke that came 5 years later. It's probably extremely difficult to prove that. And I imagine in the cases where it's cut and dry, like in John's case, he will get, and he deserves every single penny he gets. But we can't get away from the fact that vaccine hesitancy is far more dangerous than getting the vaccine. Of course it is.
Is it really? Well, Amy's actually right.
114
Look at the
million doses. There's going to be a few that had a.
But the thing is, look, we were told, oh, if you get this vaccine, it's going to stop transmission. You're not going to be able to give it to anyone, and it's going to stop you from getting COVID. And to be fair, that wasn't true.
Well, you see, that's the thing. So I was like Jonathan. I was, an advocate for the vaccine. I encouraged people to get vaccinated because I thought you'd be protecting others and yourself and so on and so forth. And I do feel a bit duped at that point because I was helping the government out and everything else like that. And the reason I feel duped isn't because I know, obviously, terribly and tragically some people died and some people got injured. But I feel duped because it wasn't true. It didn't prevent transmission at all. We learned that it doesn't. So one of the main premises of me ensuring that others around me were vaccinated was that. And seeing as that didn't turn out to be true, it kind of irritated me a little bit. But I do admit vaccines are good, but you just have to,
Look, Patrick, these type of topics are the things that the COVID inquiry should be focusing on. And sadly, at the start, we've focused on personalities, when actually I'm far more interested in understanding the science and the decisions behind that science. OK, all right. All
of you, thank you very much. And thank you to John as well for coming on there and getting his story out there. Look, coming up, as a pro-Palestine mob besieged a Tory MP's house last night while his children were home, accusing him of being a war criminal, has Britain just become unrecognisable now? But why didn't the police present actually stop them? So many questions. We'll try to answer them shortly. But next, tonight's panel of top pundits return because we've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you. Stay tuned.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday, from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, 1 year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government, way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Now it's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight in the liveliest pay-per-view you'll get on the telly. It is the front pages. Let's do it. Going with the Metro. A click in the teeth for Charles. Harry and Meghan accused as King returns for treatment. This is about the website relaunch of Harry and Meghan. We've spoken about that tonight, essentially dining out on the old royal branding. Michael Cole, by the way, we had on, thought it might be illegal. No doubt they will deny that. The Eye. Starmer fights to limit damage after second candidate rants about Israel. Again, we've spoken quite a lot about this already tonight. Keir Starmer is trying to head off a deepening crisis in the Labour Party. Candidates dropping like flies now because it turns out, shock horror, if you scratch the surface, they've got some incredibly fruity views. The Guardian, Labour in turmoil as party ditches second candidate over Israel views. Obviously, as well, the picture story for The Guardian there is what a legend. Radio DJ Steve Wright dies, sadly, at the age of 69. The Daily Express, and this is a story that we're going to be focusing on now. When a bullying pro-Palestine mob can frighten MP Tobias Ellwood's family by besieging his home and accusing the senior Tory of being a war criminal with the police present, aren't we entitled to ask what on earth is Britain coming to? Here, here, cracking front page from the Daily Express. We're going to delve into that. I've got Nana Aquia with me, GB News superstar. I've got Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, Jonathan Gullis, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. I think we've got a clip of this protest.
I'm not only for the Palestinian people. You are here. You are everywhere. Save the world.
Right, so that's outside his house. His kids are in. The police are there. They did nothing. Nana, what on earth is the world coming to?
I don't... Well, they're almost saying, oh, yeah, it's perfectly legal. They're protecting the right of them to protest. Hang on a minute, that's harassment.
Yeah.
You're outside somebody's house, you've got flags, you've got everything, you've got music lab. That's not protesting. That's harassment outside someone's front door. It's intimidating, it's scary, and it's downright totally unacceptable in this country. I don't know what's happened to the police. Have they lost complete sight of reality here? You cannot go outside someone's house and just protest. And if I was to do that around an ex's house, and they'd be getting a non-molestation order on me and telling me to just clear off. That is disgraceful. It's disgraceful. I don't understand what the police are doing. I don't think they know the rules. That can't be right.
Jonathan, I mean, look, this obviously affects you directly.
I was incensed, Patrick, by what I saw there, because that is intimidation, that is harassment. Yeah. MPs can be contacted via email, via phone. They have surgeries that people can attend. We have social media accounts that people can leave comments on. I literally do street surgeries where I send random letters to random households and say, if you want me to knock on your door, shove this in the window. Anyone in my community can challenge me, but if you dare come near my house, believe me, if the police aren't going to take action, I'll take action into my own hands, because I'm not having my 3-year-old daughter, my 2-year-old son and my fiancé put in danger because a bunch of thugs want to turn up outside my house and intimidate. My children and my fiancé should not fall victim to the fact that I happen to be the MP and that I have a certain view, which, by the way, may not be shared in my own household. So people need to get off their ignorant high horses, need to stay in their houses when it's in the evening. If they want to have a protest outside my office, by all means they can do that, as long as my staff are informed in advance and I can ensure that they're safe and the police are going to check that properly. But how dare people try and harass politicians like this? People may not like us all the time, but to do that is completely unacceptable, and the police should have been putting handcuffs on people.
It's worth remembering as well that Tobias Ellwood got in quite a lot of trouble and, in fact, was nicknamed Muller Ellwood because he went to Afghanistan and essentially did the Taliban's PR. I think we can show you a bit of that.
Well, I'm here back in Helmand province in Afghanistan, courtesy of the Halo Trust, and all that's happened here since 9/11. This is a very different country indeed. It feels different now that the Taliban have returned to power.
Well, it may be hard to believe, but security has vastly improved.
All right, I mean, I think it was the music in the background that did it for me there, to be fair, Tobias. But, I mean, you've got this guy here who's clearly very open-minded about issues in the Middle East. He's gone and, you know, well, I would argue, and I did slam him at the time for this, I think doing a bit of the Taliban's PR, and he still ends up with a mob outside his house saying you got blood on your hands, you know, in front of his kids.
I agree. I don't think that the location was appropriate, but I disagree that, one, it's a mob, and two, they're thugs.
They're not a mob. Those people with flags.
They're not.
Would you like them? What if people hung around your house after the comment you made last week about... I mean, what if people hung around your house?
Well, I have actually experienced so much harassment.
But that is harassment.
So much
You've just called it harassment.
But unfortunately, I'm not in a government which is standing by whilst war crimes are being committed, and there's a silence. And 80%.
There is no silence.
80% of the electorate are unhappy. 80% of the electorate are unhappy with the decisions. Why does protests happen?
Amy, I never. This 80% figure.
Finish the sentence, maybe.
OK, go on, finish it.
I'm just saying protest happens when people aren't happy with government decisions.
This 80% figure is not in my inbox.
If they listen to the electorate, then maybe the
North.
protests wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, but not outside the house. The protests can happen.
I said I don't agree with it being outside his house. I disagree.
Well, that's the point.
Let's have a little chat about the police side of it now, OK? Because people, time and time again, on
two-tier policing, Patrick, again.
Feel that there is two-tier policing.
Two-tier policing,
and this is a problem. I mean, if we have a police force that clearly does not feel as though they can move people from outside, well, anyone's house, really, but in this case, you know, a prominent MP with his kids in there, and you've got, you know, a mob outside, I do question what the point of it all is.
Well,
the police got it.
It is two-tier policing. Suella Braverman was bang on the money when she called it out, and even though that certain elements of the lefty chai latte drinking media lost their tiny minds unnecessarily, this was exactly why people like myself make the comments that we do. It is intimidation, it is harassment, it is a breach of the law, it's disturbing the peace. There's plenty of, therefore, rules I've just outlined that you could easily have used in that moment. And if they get taken to a cell and the CPS go, you can't charge them, well, guess what? You've still removed them, the threat, from the household, and therefore would have been able to ensure Tobias and his family have the safety and security they need. I shouldn't require to have panic alarms in my bedroom that I do have, or by my front door, or CCTV being installed, or having my gates regularly checked, or having bulletproof cling film put over my windows at my house, just to be a member of Parliament. Those are things I have to live with just to be an MP. So those thugs, which is what they are, should get handcuffs on them and should be ashamed of themselves. If they want to try and harass people like that, go, if they're so concerned, by all means go out to Gaza and protest out there. But I won't have MPs who are just simply trying to serve the public interest by looking after this nation intimidated unnecessarily. That is mob rule, and I won't fall for it.
That's the point, isn't it? They're not serving the public interest because the public interest is currently against the way government are behaving
who says
with
this?
regards to this
Who
issue.
says this?
With every poll that is done.
But the poll. You ask people things like, do you want to stop bombing somewhere? And people say, well, yes. But it's not to say that people are against the actual approach the government is taking. It's a very, very complicated issue. in foreign policy, right? And if you ask anyone, are you against people dying? Well, they're obviously going to say yes, but there is more to it than that.
And, and also the fact that they're going to his house. Look, I agree with you, Amy, that the right to protest is sacrosanct. You should be allowed to protest. But there are rules, and you cannot just go to someone's house and harass them outside their door with loudspeakers, flags, music and loads and loads of people. That's just totally out of order.
All right, coming up. Yes. Should protesters who target war memorials face jail sentences? Amy thinks absolutely not, apparently, but the government may have other ideas. We'll debate that when I crown tonight's greatest Bristling Union jackass. Plus, which provocative position has posh cycling vigilante and BBC presenter Jeremy Vine back into the headlines? Find out in a second instalment of my press pack. Yes, there is a saucy clip to go with it as well. I'll see you in a sec.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
When you listen to Nigel Farage's assessment there, do you feel that maybe this is as good as it was going to get, given that we had the pandemic and it was inevitably always going to be a bit of a mixed bag?
Well, I think it's a bit of a poor excuse from Nigel there that they haven't done it properly. The facts are, Nigel, that it's not worked. It's not going to work. Yes, we will rejoin. I mean, are we better off for it? Are they...
Can I jump in there, Charlie? We're going to rejoin under which government? Because Labour aren't going to do that, unless you don't think...
But I mean, it's going to be unavoidable not to join, because I think it's getting worse and worse for us. I mean, let me just say this. Are the NHS better because we're out of Europe? No, they're not, because they're not employing more staff. Is the building trade better off? No. Is travelling abroad or to the EU or staying in the EU, are we better off? No. Are we better off because foods rise because of the EU? No. Are we better off with imports and export? No, because they're taking longer. The overall result is that we're not better off. The killer point here is 57% of the public will now vote to remain. 33% would leave. Surely that's the telling point.
It depends on the pollster, Charlie, because we were talking to a very good pollster earlier who said there's no enthusiasm for any change in a year. Maybe 10 years, they might be thinking about it.
Belinda de Lucia, let's bring you in. I'm sure you want to react to what Charlie said.
I mean, who would have thought that the UK wanting to run its own affairs and making our politicians more accountable would be so revolutionary? EU Parliament voted a majority to get rid of the vetoes, the last remaining scraps of democracy that the EU had. Now, luckily for EU citizens at the moment, you know, it means a treaty change to actually go forward. But that is the mood. The ever closer union. We have dodged a federalised, globalist, international, power-gobbling, anti-democratic organisation, and that's worth more than a few trade and travel perks for a few wealthy people in this country.
Hear, hear. Belinda de Lucia, Charlie Mullins, great to see you both.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you. Let's do it. All right, we've got the Telegraph. Labour faces fresh crisis over anti-Israel remarks. We've got ministers snap up 16,000 rentals for asylum seekers despite housing woes. Big picture there of Queen Camilla honoured as a fan's favourite. Let's go to the Mirror. The gang organiser accused... So, PC Sharon murder accused pivotal to fatal raid in 2005, court told. I'll just read the front bit of the story. A takeaway boss was the mastermind behind the armed robbery that left PC Sharon Beshnevsky dead, a court heard today. So, yeah, there'll be more on that. We're going to the Daily Mail. The Sun, it's the Sun now. Much loved DJ who ruled the airwaves. Radio wonder, there we go. And that is, of course, the sad passing of Steve Wright, who's died at the age of 69. The Mail now, row over Harry's royal website rebrand. We've covered that already tonight. And again, yes, Steve Wright's sad passing of at the age of 69. We're going to talk about Steve Wright in a moment or two, but just before that, I just wanted to ask you who you thought was in the wrong, OK? Because there's a clip that has gone viral. It involves broadcaster Jeremy Vine. Now, he's no stranger to shifting gears, particularly when avoiding London's angry drivers. But he seemed to take a recent near miss with a driver all in his stride in this social media post.
You are sat in a provocative position.
I was sat in a provocative position.
Oh, my God.
Do we think he's all right?
I love Jeremy. I think he's great, and he was in the right there. Because, first of all, the guy, if you are passing a cyclist, you do not pass a cyclist at that speed. So even if you think that they're in your way...
You only have to be within 100... You know those videos?
But did you see how fast he went? No, he was annoyed, so he drove off like that. I mean, that's crazy driving.
Yeah. I actually... full disclosure, I had a... Bizarrely, went for lunch with Jeremy Vine the other week, and actually, really nice guy, seriously.
Lovely.
But what I will say is cycling militancy is a scourge on our society.
Yeah, Patrick, more of that chat. More of that. It is. Look, Jeremy, I've never met Jeremy. He seems like a perfect nice chap, and I know I see these videos occasionally pop up, and, you know, it does drive me around the bend because it can be bloody annoying, these cyclists on the roads.
You could be 20 yards away from them.
But I will say that I actually think... That's a very funny way to kind of... I mean, I'm not quite sure how you can ride in a provocative position. I certainly won't be attempting to anytime soon for everyone's safety.
That's a viral video.
That would go viral. But, you know, fair play on Jeremy for having a laugh. And
what do you make of this? I mean, look, it's the age-old cyclist versus driver debate, Amy, isn't it, really?
There's just not room for both on the roads. That's the problem. New roads. But I'm, amazed the amount of stuff Jeremy packs in a day, because he does his show in the morning, his radio show in the afternoon, and he still has time for social media japes.
It's true. It is
amazing.
True. I mean,
what a workhorse.
The guy's got boundless energy, but there we are. Yes, so I think we can skip ahead now because we're going to be doing today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Nana, who is your Greatest Britain, please?
OK, so this may surprise you, but I'm no fan of Rishi Sunak. But I'm going to give it to Rishi Sunak because he was there. He was prepared to stand up and talk to everybody and answer questions that he hadn't seen. We haven't had it. I don't think we've had Keir Starmer do something as open as this, or Ed Davey, or any of the other leaders. Where are they?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give him that for that. So Rishi,
OK, this
for
is
me.
the People's Forum. Obviously, the offer is, and it very much is there for Keir Starmer and Ed Davey, etc. And we do hope you take us up on that offer. Jonathan, who's your Greatest Britain?
Patrick, this is going to look like I'm kissing your peachy rear, but, I have nominated you for bravely coming forward and sharing your battle with mental health and with alcohol. I mean, I've got this as a touch me I've attempted on my own life when I was a teenager. I still struggle with my mental health and have actually talked about it with Gloria Del Piero on her show. I've got family and loved ones who have battles with mental health and alcoholism as well. To bravely come forward to share that story just gets more men talking about it, more people being aware of the issue. And please, to anyone watching, you're not alone. There's plenty of help, including the Samaritans and other amazing organisations.
Well, he can't win. He can't vote for himself.
No, I won't. But I mean, even I am not that much of a narcissist, right? That really is saying something. Jonathan, thank you very much. I do really appreciate that. And also, as well, just quickly, I didn't get the chance to do it last night because we were caught up in the People's Forum and everything, but I do just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who was sending really, really kind messages, etc., when I spoke about my addiction, which meant a lot because it was obviously quite a nerve-wracking thing to do. But anyway, that's enough of that, right? Go on, Amy, who's your Greatest Britain, please?
Well, of course, I would second Jonathan's nomination, but I've gone for Steve Wright, the soundtrack to my lockdown, in fact, who lost his life today. So young, so shocking, and it's so sad. So we just thought we could remember him today.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about Steve Wright. A lot of people were either raised on Steve Wright if they were a little bit younger, or they were... it was the soundtrack to people's lives, wasn't it? A big shock today, Steve Wright, age of 69.
I know, because I'm a real radio buff, and I'm sure he did Our Tune, and that was where he said, it was a love story, and you'd be... And I used to listen to that every single day at university. In my university, when it was on, I'd listen to it, and but he's got had this amazing voice, hasn't he? Very distinctive. So he was one of my, radio is my passion. I started in media, in radio, and he was one of the people that I used to listen to all the time.
Well, today's Greatest Britain is Steve Wright. So there we go. So well done. And also, it's a rare victory for Amy Nicole.
Oh yeah.
So well done, Amy. Right, we're going to have to rattle through these Union Jackasses now. Go on, Nana.
All right. Well, my Union Jackass has to be the parole board for letting a British double child murderer Colin Pitchfork off, kind of thing, because he's won a sort of a new release hearing, which I don't know why they wish, and we're actually paying for him to have these hearings. I don't know why he should even be allowed that. I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Go on, Jonathan.
It's Clown-in-Chief Sir Keir Starmer, who cannot even run the Labour Party, who is allowed it to continue to rot with anti-Semitism. Need I say more?
OK, go on, Amy.
the Conservative Party for saying that they'll put people who protest near war memorials in prison for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because we have so much room in our prisons, don't we?
Lock them up.
Yeah, shame there's no space.
Lock them up.
Lock them
All
up.
right,
Teach
Sir
them a lesson.
Keir Starmer is today's Union Jackass, I think, rather predictably. Look, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening as well. I'll be back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. It's Headliners next. I will see you, well, tomorrow at 9. Keep fighting the good fight, wonderful people.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Yes, across Scotland it is going to be a chilly night with some frost likely, but for most of us it's a cloudy, wet and mild story because of a weather system that pushed its way in earlier today and has already brought a fair amount of rain across many parts of England and Wales, staying cloudy and wet across many parts through the night, and rain also pushing into Northern Ireland too as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. However, across much of Scotland, clear skies here, and with that then temperatures taking a bit of a drop, falling a few degrees below freezing, so a fairly harsh frost here, but much milder elsewhere where we have those cloudy skies. As we go through tomorrow itself then, another grey gloomy day for most of us. Further outbreaks of rain could be heavy, could turn persistent for a time in the south, and some persistent rain pushing in then across parts of Scotland with some snow over the highest ground. Greatest chance of seeing any sunshine tomorrow will be in the far north of Scotland, but here's where it's also going to be chilliest. Elsewhere, a pretty mild day with highs of around 14 or 15 Celsius. Mild for most on Thursday, could be even milder than on Wednesday, but again cloudy with further outbreaks of rain, and these could be pretty heavy at times. Could see some localised impacts. Notice some heavier rain pushing into the south as we go into the afternoon. At the moment, Friday does look like it will be drier with some bright or sunny spells, but then the rain returns in time for Saturday. Bye-bye, I'll see you again soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
I appreciate the story isn't in today's papers, but it has been running all week, and it's this row over the use of nitrogen hypoxia to kill this man who was on death row in Alabama.
Yeah.
And it's been linked back to you, and I wanted to ask you about it because this is intriguing, because you did a television show back in 2015 where you, I believe, tested this method of execution. Just tell me briefly about it, Michael. What happened?
I didn't test this method of execution, and it was a bit longer ago than that. But what I did do was test hypoxia. So I tested various ways in which people are killed in the United States, and asked the question as to whether there was a more humane way of doing it. So I was put into hypoxic situations, for example, into a chamber run by the Netherlands Air Force, which simulated what happens if you're in an aircraft at 30,000 feet and suddenly the windows blow out. And what happened to me was that I was almost instantly rendered incapable. As an experiment, I was trying to play with children's toys, putting triangle shapes into triangle spaces, and I was quickly unable to do that. I was asked, what is 9 minus 5? And I said 5. And then the officer who was with me, the Air Force officer who was wearing an oxygen mask, said to me, Michael, put your mask on or you will die. And I was incapable of putting my own mask on. Now, this suggested that hypoxia was very fast acting.
Yeah.
And that you had... Obviously, I was in no pain or anything like that. I was just completely unaware. By the way, this is why, if you're on an aircraft and it depressurizes, you must put your own mask on first. But of course, I can't go on and draw conclusions.
No.
We did not experiment with nitrogen. But what I can say is it was evident to me that hypoxia renders you incapable almost instantaneously.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're with GB News, and the top story tonight, a former Labour MP who's seeking re-election has been administratively suspended from the Labour Party over anti-Semitic remarks he allegedly made at a party meeting. The Jewish Labour movement has condemned the comments that Graham Jones reportedly made about British Israeli Jews, saying they were appalling and unacceptable. That comes after Sir Keir Starmer withdrew his party's support for another candidate, Azhar Ali, who was recorded suggesting Israel had used the Hamas attack as a pretext to invade Gaza. Conservative Minister Grant Shapps accused the Labour leader of taking the public for fools by promoting a candidate who he says has expressed the most atrocious racism against Jewish people. But Sir Keir Starmer insisted the party had changed under his leadership.
Well, those comments were appalling, and that is why we took decisive action. It is virtually unprecedented to withdraw support for a candidate in the way that I withdrew support for this candidate yesterday. That's what a changed Labour Party is all about. And of course, any allegation will be fully investigated by the party. But the important thing is the decisive action that's being taken to make it absolutely clear that this is a changed Labour Party.
The government is looking closely at the option of bringing injured children from Gaza to the UK for medical treatment. Lord Cameron's revealed there is the possibility of transferring some children to British hospitals, including Great Ormond Street. However, the Foreign Secretary reiterated to the House of Lords earlier that initial efforts are focused on providing medical assistance to Palestinians in the region itself. Here, the Court of Appeal is speedily quashing the convictions of ex-post office workers under a fast-track approach. That's according to the most senior judge in England and Wales. Justice Baroness Carr says unopposed cases are being resolved in a matter of weeks. It comes after 42-year-old Jacqueline Falcon, a victim of the scandal,